You're listening to If Only I Were Wiser podcast, where Raina Wilson brings together wisdom and raw life stories to provide encouragement and truth. So many times it's easy to become discouraged in your own pursuit of health because your story or circumstances look drastically different from your favorite influencer or even the expectations you had for yourself. If that is you, welcome! This space is for you to learn, breathe, and maybe just listen and see what wellness could look like for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. On today's episode, I have fitness entrepreneur and new mama, Bailey Turner. Bailey is married to her husband, Zachary, and has two morkie puppies, Ziggy and Jax, and just welcomed their first baby in December, Marlow Marie. Bailey runs her online business on Instagram through @BodyFitBalance, where she shares the real and raw of motherhood, as well as tips and tricks to starting your fitness journey and living a healthy, balanced lifestyle. And on this episode, that's exactly what she shares here, what it's been like for her with her newborn baby, navigating all the fitness and bounce back culture, as well as building a foundation that's healthiest for herself and as she raises this little girl. I'm so excited to get started, so let's dive in. Hey Bailey, thank you so much for joining me on the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. Like I told you, I'm kind of fangirling right now, so I'm so excited for this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, can we get started by sharing a little bit about your family? Super exciting right now. I know things are all kind of a whirlwind, but just a little bit more about you.
Yeah, of course. So I'm almost 25. I turned 25 this month. I'm married. So I just had my first baby in December, and her name is Marlow, and my husband's name is Zach, and we have two dogs, Ziggy and Jax. They're morkies. They're our babies that are kind of a little bit jealous now that there's an actual human baby in our house. We are originally from Wisconsin, but we moved to southern Utah a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago, just kind of trying to try something new. We were kind of sick of being in the Midwest and dealing with the winters. We were both kind of just like sick of being in the cold weather, and we have some friends out here, so we decided to move down, or we visited them and we loved it. So we're like, let's just move and see where life takes us. And then not really knowing we'd start a family this early, we were like, okay, it kind of sucks being this far away from family, but also at the same time, we still love it down here. So yeah, we live in southern Utah. I own my own business, Body Fit Balance LLC. It is like a fitness business. I started it while I was in nursing school. So I'm also a nurse, but I don't practice anymore. And yeah, we just love inspiring others to live a healthy, balanced lifestyle. And, my whole page kind of started when I was in nursing school. I wanted to compete in like a bodybuilding show. Yeah, it was wild. It was kind of one of those things where I was playing collegiate volleyball and I ended up stopping, and I needed something to still like be competitive at because I love being competitive. And so I was like, okay, well, I want to stay in shape because obviously after being in sports for your whole life and then stopping, you kind of gain weight. You're not,
Right.
You just feel different. So I decided to like put my energy towards that. And it was kind of like a wake up call because I realized I was not being healthy with what I was doing, trying to get like the skinniest version of myself. So I started my Instagram just basically, sharing my foods that I was eating, and it was really like bland, boring, like broccoli and fish and gross things, or like, the Lenny and Larry's cookies and all the macro friendly items that you could find and fit into your macros.
Yeah.
And I just developed a really unhealthy relationship with food and exercise. And so, I ended up getting injured. I didn't compete in like the bodybuilding show that I wanted to. And it was kind of a wake up call for myself. And I kind of took a step back and realized that I was not treating my body the way I should. And if I wanted to, be healthy, I needed to do more than just, be a size, 2 or 4 or whatever. Because I realized that being the smallest version of myself, I wasn't the happiest version of myself.
Right.
So I just realized that, this whole time I was trying to shrink myself because I thought that that's like what would make me the happiest. So by getting injured, not pursuing the bodybuilding show, I realized that I need to just live a healthier lifestyle and kind of be more flexible. So I would be going to like, family gatherings and stuff like that and like bringing my own meals. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like I can't live like this. So I just started like working out because I enjoyed it and trying to, eat a burger and fries here and there and, just live life and not be so restrictive. And I think that's when my page started to take off because I was much more relatable. I wasn't eating, broccoli and chicken for every meal.
Yeah, all the sad meals.
Exactly. And I was just showing like that I loved working out. I loved being strong. But I was also not afraid to, eat whatever I wanted to and just live a healthy, balanced lifestyle. So the minute that, and it wasn't like a, flip the switch, like one day I was super rigid, the next day I was super flexible because nobody can do that. It's very hard. Yeah. It took a few months and it took, years of, healing my relationship with food and exercise to get to a point where I am living a healthy, balanced lifestyle. And I have, I just feel like my page has become much more relatable because I'm not like that anymore. So that's kind of like where my whole page started. It's crazy that I'm able to make like a career out of it. I love it. I love my community. I feel like we have the best community ever. And it all stemmed from, that one injury that caused me to totally, change my whole mindset regarding my health and fitness and nutrition. So that's kind of a little bit about me.
Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't know that about volleyball either, or bodybuilding, which I feel like that's so many women's stories that I've like talked to of like, yeah, I wanted to pursue bodybuilding. Because even in my head, I remember having that conversation with a friend of like, maybe I should just like try and get on stage. And she's like, Raina, first of all, that's not your personality. Second of all, like that's not healthy for your heart. So thankfully I had somebody else to be able to be like, pump the brakes.
That's so good. Yeah. And I feel like as a young, even in high school, I feel like we have this like unrealistic beauty standard. And I know that you touched on this in like some of the questions, like in what you sent me. And I couldn't agree more. Like in high school, you want to try the skinny teas, you want to intermittent fast, you want to do all this cardio just to be so skinny, like those Victoria's Secret models or the people you see on social media. And I feel like that is like a little bit of what caused me to want to do the bodybuilding show because I kept seeing these shredded, lean, beautiful women on the bodybuilding, stage. And I'm like, I want to look like that. Like I just got done playing volleyball. I gained the freshman 15 because I was eating at the cafeteria constantly. And then I stopped like working out. So I was like, what can I do to my body to make it look like that? So I was doing 60 minutes of cardio a day. My knees were literally shot. It was just so unhealthy. And I was like, binging and then like restricting and just in this constant unhealthy cycle. And I know a lot of women that do that, and they don't really talk about it openly because they're afraid to, but a lot of people that compete have a really, really terrible relationship with food. And it took me to go through that to see that myself. So, whenever somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, I want to look like this, or I want to lose 50 pounds, or I want to compete. And I'm like, you need to make sure that you're doing this in the most healthy way possible if you do want to compete. Because I'm all for like supporting people in their goals. But I think a lot of times people are in it for the wrong reasons.
Absolutely.
And it's to look a certain way and be the smallest version of themselves, which I don't approve of.
Yeah, which is so interesting because I have like a good friend of mine that is currently bodybuilding and she's doing great and she's in a really good place and I'm really pumped for her. But then I also interviewed Addison Barnhart. I don't know if you know her, but I had her on the podcast and she was like, she said exactly that for one of our episodes in season 1 of I was trying to forever be the smallest version of myself.
Yeah.
And it's just like crazy to hear like so many women's stories about I had this, even myself, when Tumblr was cool, I had like a whole Tumblr board of like all these like other women that I was like, oh, this is like my inspo board for my body. So unhealthy.
Yeah. I just can't believe how many women think that being the smallest version of themselves, they're going to be the happiest because I've been there and I'm not. And I'm for the furthest from happiest. I'm the craziest, most stressed out, psychotic, like mean girl. Like I'm just not myself. And when I was at the end of like my prep, when I was, 4 weeks out from competing and I had lost, 30 pounds, I was barely eating any carbs. I was like so crabby and just mean to like my family because I was not eating enough and I was just not me.
Yeah. Which is so crazy because like, I think there's a fine line in like how you approach like the bodybuilding world, but that would never be something that I would tell my son.
100%.
How has this journey, knowing where you came from, been like for you to walk into pregnancy where you have to gain weight? Like I've had that conversation with so many women.
Yeah. So I feel like going into it, or even before I got pregnant, I was like, oh my gosh, like I kept wanting to put off like starting a family because I was so nervous to like ruin my body, because I feel like that's what everyone tells you, like pregnancy ruins you, like you're never the same again and you're going to gain so much weight and blah, blah, blah. So I was really nervous, like before we even started, because I was like, oh no, like I've worked so hard at the body that I have. Like I don't want to ruin anything. So once I got pregnant though, I feel like everything kind of changed. Like I wasn't as worried about it. I didn't really gain a ton in my first trimester because I was not hungry at all. And I had a bunch of food aversions, but second trimester and third trimester, I packed on the pounds. Like I think at the end I gained almost 60 pounds, which I'm not like proud of that by any means, but like at the end of the day, like your body is going to do what it needs to do. And yeah, I could have probably been a little bit better about my nutrition. I could have probably been a little bit better about moving, but pregnancy, like nobody can prepare you for what it is like. I was always like, I'm going to be so active during my pregnancy.
Nope.
I'm going to be like, like you just think you're going to do all these things and then you go through it and you're like, oh my gosh, I was just trying to freaking make it through the day. Like, whether the first trimester, like aversions and being sick and like not feeling the best, like second trimester was great. And then third trimester was like, okay, I'm sick and tired of being pregnant. Get this baby out of me. I truthfully like felt like it was going to be harder than it was, but I like looking back, I wasn't super concerned about like this number on the scale. I think the stretch marks at the end kind of got to me because I was like,
yeah, same.
I made it until like 38 weeks and then all of a sudden my legs, it was like a bomb went off and like my legs, my stomach, my boobs, like everything had stretch marks. And I was like, the hell, come on.
I had the same conversation with my husband because I went 42-3. So my son like,
oh my goodness,
well,
held on.
But I swear it was like 38 or 40 weeks. And I like walked in to go to the bathroom one day and my belly was like covered in the purple and red scars. I'm like, son, you did so great. What happened?
I know. I was telling my mom, I was like, I literally have been so lucky because my mom had stretch marks like at like 16 to 22 weeks, like super early. And I'm like, I have been so good. It was like 37, 38 weeks. And I'm like, I have 0. And then, or it was like, I think it was 37 because I gave birth at 38-4. And so like a week before giving birth, like all these new ones just started coming up. And I'm like, I'm not lucky. I thought I was lucky, but I'm not. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know. My birth plan, story, whatever, was very different than how it went and the exact opposite of what I hoped for. And at the end of the day, you kind of forget about all of the bad things and you just focus on, okay, I have a healthy baby and that's all that matters. And yeah, my body doesn't look the same as it once did, but and some days it is hard. Like it is hard to, look at all the stretch marks and be like, oh my God, one day I didn't have this before, I'm not going to say it's easy because, some days you do look in the mirror and you're like, holy crap, like my body is completely different. But at the end of the day, like you wouldn't change anything for the world.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to go back and touch on, I think you had said something about when you were walking into early pregnancy. One of the best things I think my friend had said to me pretty early on, because I like had similar sentiments because we're a military family. I wanted to get pregnant. We're a young couple. We're both 25, but I was like, I feel like the Lord is calling us to have a family. I want to be a mom. And so I was like wrestling with a friend and I was like, I've worked so hard. Like my husband was recently on a like couple month long training. I didn't get to talk to him. We didn't see each other. And I was like, I've been in the gym. I've like put so much work into my body. And then we found out through like a crazy story, like that we were pregnant. And I called her and was like so upset because I like wanted to be pregnant and had prayed for this baby for so long, but then was also grieving the fact that I knew my body would never look the same after this. And the one thing that she told me was, Raina, this baby is not an interruption to your workout routine.
Love that.
And I was like,
I love that. Yeah, no kidding.
Thank you for that reminder. So it's definitely, like you said, been a place where I've had to be a lot more gentle with myself.
100%.
You know, seeing the stretch marks and like being kind, because like I would never tell my son this is your fault, you know, like I would never want him to be ashamed of like what my body looks like,
or you're like, oh, you ruined my body. Like I never ever want her to hear me say any of those words, because she's like the best thing obviously that's ever happened to me. So, you know, obviously like I'm willing to go through whatever it takes to, you know, for her. And that's how you feel as a mom. Like before being pregnant, like I just didn't get it. I feel like I was a little bit more selfish. Like, you know, like I didn't want to ruin my body. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I look so good. Like I don't want to go back to, you know, like having stretch marks and all that stuff. So yeah, it definitely is hard, but like you said, it's worth it. And you don't want your kid to ever think that it was their fault that you have like stretch marks or you view your body as being like imperfect or anything.
Right. Absolutely. Do you feel like that, like walking this out on social media on like a public platform, like what has been the good and ugly of walking it out on social media?
Yeah. So I feel like for the most part, I would say 99% of the time I get the most amazing messages, comments, you know, just people that are truly so helpful to like with motherhood. Cause obviously I'm a first time mom, like I don't know everything and it's nice to get people's like advice, but then on the other hand, it's also terrible to get people's advice because you deal with unsolicited advice constantly. And so like I've tried to be, you know, more conscious about what I'm posting so that I don't, you know, always get unsolicited advice. I feel like there's certain things that you can post and be okay with receiving advice about. And then other things, it's kind of like, okay, I don't want to receive any messages about this, so I'm just not going to post it. For example, like I will never post a picture of Marlow in her car seat because I know people are car seat freaks. And I know that we're fine. Like I install it, I put her in it perfectly. Everything is perfect. But if you have like a tiny bit of slack or like the thing is crooked or literally anything, or you're covering her with a blanket in it, the car seat police will come after you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
yes.
There's just certain things I just don't want to even touch on. So I feel like overall it's been really good because I have a lot of new moms that also follow me that have had their babies around the same time that I have. And me, by just sharing the good and the bad and the ugly, a lot of people message me and say, thank you so much. Like you're being more helpful than you've ever been. Like I'm more like, you're more relatable than you've ever been to me. And I'm like, obviously you see the flip side of that too, where you have people that are like, I'm sorry, but I want you to post workouts and
no
just
way.
Workouts.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, 100%. I've had people like message me and be like, sorry, I'm unfollowing you because you're just not relatable to me anymore. I'm like, okay, see ya. Like you don't have to announce you're leaving. I'm totally different now. Like I'm not the same person I was a year ago. Like I'm a mom now. Like I'm going to share more than just fitness because that's my life. And I'm more than just a fitness girl, you know?
How has that been like to balance knowing the expectations of like some of the people on the social media platform to like postpartum snapback, bounce back culture? Because I'm sure everybody else has, you know, everybody has something to say, period.
Oh, for sure. And I feel like a lot of women are like, just as soon as they have a baby, they're like, okay, I want to bounce back. I want to snap back. I want to be skinny. I want to do this. And they end up, restricting themselves and getting in a really, really bad mindset. And obviously postpartum is super hard as it is, with postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. And thankfully, like, I haven't really I haven't really went through that. And I'm really thankful for that, because I feel like, Zach's home with me every day. We work from home. So I have his support, which has been the biggest help in the world. But women that go through that and then they're trying to put this extra pressure on themselves to look like how they used to look, it's just so unrealistic. And like, I think women need to remember that we literally grew a human in 9-10 months. You're not going to snap back in, a couple of months. And it's really important to take those first, like, at least 3 to 4 months to heal. Like, you don't want to jump right back into doing, a bunch of cardio and really heavy lifting and all this stuff, because, your pelvic floor is going to be so weak after pregnancy. Your core is going to be so weak. And if you don't take the proper time to rebuild and heal, you're going to cause a lot more problems than you even know. So I have been trying to do my best about, encouraging women to, take it slow in the postpartum period. And I've been trying to share my journey with it too, about how I'm trying to take it slow and take it easy, and how I'm not trying to, work out 6 days a week and kill myself. And I don't really post like body updates all the time where I'm like, okay, like, I'm 5 pounds away from my baby body weight or whatever. Right. Like, I don't do that because I'm not focused on that. I don't weigh myself. Like, I weighed myself maybe for the first couple of weeks after pregnancy, just to see like if I was like losing any of the water weight. Cause I did feel just like, after you have a baby, you just feel puffy.
You feel gross.
Yeah. But I don't step on the scale every day and I'm like, oh my God, okay, so like that workout was a really good workout and I ate really good yesterday and I lost 2 pounds. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not obsessing over that. I'm focusing on moving my body because in the morning I need it for my mental health. Going on walks because it makes me feel good and it helps, me and my family get outside and get some, sunshine and fresh air. And then just eating healthy because, I'm breastfeeding her and I want to make sure, I'm going to keep up my milk supply and I'm eating enough, because if I wasn't eating enough and I was in a deficit, she wouldn't be getting what she needs, right. So it's more so about, just feeling good and, again, having a balanced lifestyle instead of being so restrictive. Because could I, be in a calorie deficit and be super restrictive trying to get back to my pre-pregnancy weight? 100%. Do I want that for myself? No, because one, I'd be so stressed. It would probably affect my milk supply and I would probably be struggling much more than I already am with, other postpartum issues. And I'm just more focused on being healthy, healing my body, because I realize like pregnancy is hard on a woman's body and you can't just jump right back into things. So like I said, I've been just trying to post what I can to inspire others to take it slow and realize that it's a journey of healing and not snapping back and bouncing right back into things.
Yeah. And you could probably say the same sentiment. Like, I've had friends that have come to me about like postpartum and pregnancy coaching. And at least for me, it's like, I would never recommend even like counting calories postpartum. There are seasons that we have to like steward our body in different ways.
Unless you need it to like make sure you're eating enough, I feel like that's great. But in general,
but a deficit shouldn't be an option.
No, 100%. Then your body's already working so hard if you are breastfeeding, to produce and make milk. Like, I'm the most hungry that I've ever been. Like, even during pregnancy, it doesn't hold a candle to breastfeeding hunger. Like, you are just constantly hungry. So even if I wanted to be in deficit, I don't think I could.
Yeah, I had to like make sure I was eating enough, like more than enough. And my son and I's breastfeeding journey has definitely been a long and hard one. Like, we're currently still breastfeeding.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it's been breastfeeding. Maybe we can dive into that. It has been a whole other place of like managing expectations and like guarding your heart from comparison, because I've had friends that have walked all kinds of different roads with their breastfeeding journey.
Oh, 100%. And, you know, like when you're pregnant, you're like, oh, I'm going to breastfeed and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And you don't realize how hard it is. Like, you just think it's going to come natural because that's what it should. It's a natural thing to do. Like, that's what everybody says. And, you know, it was pretty good from the start with me and Marlow. But then she ended up having like a shallow latch and I had like some nipple pain and problems there. And then I realized she had a tongue and lip tie. So we had to get that revised. And then she was like preferring bottles and then she would just scream at the boob. And I'm like, okay, like this is a lot. And I would love to be able to breastfeed my kid, but I'm also not going to force it either because like, at the end of the day, I just want her to be fed and have a full belly, and that's all that matters. But nobody tells you how hard it is. And we're currently like working back to do less bottles and more breasts because she's finally like starting to latch better. And now that her like revision is healing, but it has not been easy at all. And I constantly find myself in the comparison game because I see people that post about their journeys, which I'm so glad they do because I'm not the type of mom that like gets envious of that kind of stuff. It's more so just like I compare myself, but I don't get mad at them because I'm so happy for them that they're able to breastfeed and not have any problems or anything. Just like, you know, I feel like my baby's a pretty good sleeper and I feel like sometimes I don't want to post about it because, you know, then you have people that are triggered because my baby's a good sleeper and theirs is not. So like, it's just, I feel like motherhood is constantly just comparing yourself to other moms, which is not a good thing at all because everybody struggles with different things. Like my breastfeeding journey has been like so hard. I've cried many days, just being so stressed about it. And, I wouldn't, you know, want anybody to compare themselves to me because I have my own struggles and I don't want to compare myself to anybody else because even if someone might have like the easiest breastfeeding journey ever, they might be dealing with the worst postpartum depression or the most severe postpartum anxiety. And I wouldn't know because I'm, you know, I don't see that. Like everything we see on social media is just like a tiny little fraction of that person's life. So yeah, it's so easy to compare yourself to other people, but you never really know the full picture.
Yeah. A good friend of mine would always remind me that like, just because your hard is different from somebody else's hard doesn't make yours any less hard.
100%. Like your feelings and your experience are valid, just like mine is.
Yeah. Like with my son, we've been breastfeeding for almost 21 months. And it was like, I didn't have the option of a bottle ever, you know, like we worked through, like 10 or 15 different bottles and it was like never an option. But then it's like, people also don't talk about, I think there's just so much grief in the expectation to get your baby fed because so many people have so many opinions.
You know, you hear breast is best. You hear people saying, oh, well, like, I'm glad my baby is formula fed. And like, there's just like all these different people's opinions and they're just very strong opinions that you feel like you can never really fully talk about it because people are so sensitive about the topic. And, you know, and like you said, we're just so we just compare ourselves so easily to other moms and their journeys. So then we're like guilty. You just feel guilty for whatever decision you make because everybody has opinions about the decision you make.
What has it looked like for you to like guard your heart in the midst of, like you said, sometimes it's not posting things that you know people are going to be loudmouths about, but how else do you guard your heart in this early postpartum journey?
Yeah, I feel like for sure just not posting sometimes, like just because I don't want to hear unsolicited advice about every little thing because it is exhausting. Like at the end of the day, I always tell moms, like young moms that message me, like first time moms that are saying I'm relatable, like I'm struggling too. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm just not sharing every little thing of our journey. But I just tell them like, you know, your journey and my journey are very different. And, you're going to be the best mom for your baby. No one else is going to be a better mom for your baby. And that's the thing that I always tell myself. You know, God made you their mom for a reason and no one is going to compare. So that's kind of what I constantly remind myself, like no matter what messages I get, no matter what I feel like I'm doing, because I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job. But, you know, we all have those days of like, oh my God, am I am I even doing this like right? Like, what am I doing? Some days you're just like killing it. Other days you're like, oh my God, what did I even do? Like,
slightly drowning.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, I just remind myself, like, you know, God put this beautiful miracle in my life for a reason, and I'm the best mom for her. Nobody else is going to be a better mom to her than I am.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, like, that's what I try to tell people too when they're, you know, trying to decide between, you know, breastfeeding or formula or bottle, like, because I've shared our struggles with breastfeeding and how we did have to switch to the bottle and stuff. And I'm like, at the end of the day, like, you are going to make the best decision for your baby. You can't rely on like what Joe Schmo is doing with their baby because it's all different.
Yeah, like get off the internet, stop reading the books. Like that's what I had to do.
Yes, like do in your heart what is right. Yeah, 100%.
I had to like get off our like, I think we used Huckleberry.
Yep.
Loved it. But then I realized like, I didn't realize that was like feeding my postpartum anxiety, or like all of that stress I was carrying postpartum was from the fact that like I felt like I had to like plug in every single thing. And then we got to the doctor and I was like, oh, well, I have to like keep this up because my doctor's going to ask for it. And they literally were like, you know, rotated him, weighted him. It's like, he looks great. I'm like, thanks.
I know. And Zach just told me the other day, actually, I think it was yesterday. He's like, I'm so glad we don't use that baby tracking app anymore. He's like changing Marlow's diaper. I'm like, I know, because the first couple of weeks it is nice just to know like how many, you know, wet diapers they have and when you're feeding them. But after a while it gets obsessive. Yeah, it gets obsessive and you're like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like it's just too much work. And yeah, it just feeds into that anxiety that you have. And you already have enough to do as a mom. Like tracking everything too on top of that, I don't have the time for that anymore.
No, I wish I had like the brain space to be able to be like, hey, it's okay. Like, you know what you're doing loosely. Yeah. You know, but like God is literally going to fill the gaps in all the places that you feel like you're lacking right now.
100%.
So, how do you feel like your faith journey has affected like this transition to motherhood for you?
So we actually miscarried our first time when we tried getting pregnant. And so I think that's when I really was like, okay, wow, like this, like I really do want a baby. Like after like going through that was like, this really sucks. Like, and people go through this all the time and no one talks about it, which I understand why, but also like it makes you feel so alone when you go through it. And so I really relied on my faith. I remember, you know, up until that point, I would listen to, you know, pop every day during my workouts. Like during that phase of my life, I was literally listening to Christian music constantly. Like I had my year in review, like for Apple Music, and it was all Christian music. And I think that sums up like, I don't know, just my switch in my faith journey. I realized that I couldn't do it by myself. Like I needed to let go of control because I love control. I love feeling like, you know, I have control over everything. Ask my husband. It kind of is annoying sometimes, but I realized that I needed to let go of control and just let God deal with it and let him, you know, make it the way he wants to make it. So the minute that I, you know, let go of control and just prayed a lot, like I said, I was listening to Christian music all the time. And I just was like, I just surrendered everything to him. And I was like, okay, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Like I can't worry too much about it. And I know, and I'm very thankful that we don't struggle with infertility or anything, because I know that that's a totally different ball game. But we were able to get pregnant right away again, which I'm so thankful for. But that didn't stop the worries, because then at our anatomy scan, we found out that she had something wrong with one of her kidneys. So then we were constantly just worried, and like it took everything I had to just like let go and just let God like handle it, because you know, I couldn't do anything, but I couldn't heal her kidney. I couldn't do anything, like change anything with my diet or what I was doing to heal her. So Zach and I prayed for her kidney and her every single night. And we just surrendered it to him. And we had like 2 other ultrasounds checking on her kidneys throughout our pregnancies, and it just didn't like resolve, which we thought it would. Like 90% of cases end up resolving during the pregnancy. So, we were really bummed at those appointments. We're like, God, like, why? I was kind of frustrated. I was like, why 90% of things, resolve in these babies, but not, like, why not our baby? Like, what's wrong? Like, why can't this be fixed? Because I don't want to see my baby have to go through a little procedure to like fix her kidney. So like I was frustrated with him, but I just kept praying. I kept, staying positive, and I was like, you know what? Like I just know in my heart that God is going to make this right. He's going to fix her, and everything's going to be okay. And even if it doesn't end up resolving, I know that it's still going to be okay because, he's going to be there for her, and it's his plan, And I think Zach is really good at like reminding me of that too. When I did have like really rough days of like, oh my God, like I wish that it would just resolve, the doubts and the worries would creep in. But then we had her, and she had her little ultrasound after like 24 hours after she was born. And again, we were just praying constantly that everything was fine with that. And like a day later, we got a call, and they're like, her kidneys are perfectly normal. Whoa. And I was like, I know. And I still get like teary eyed. I know, like I literally started bawling on the phone, and I like got chills, and I was like, that just goes to show you like how faithful that he is,
Wow. Yeah, I'm getting choked up. That's awesome. I think it's just like such a sweet reminder of like God's kindness, because I remember telling a friend, because like I had several friends that miscarried when we got pregnant. I'll share briefly. So I was told I had PCOS for forever. I was on birth control for almost 10 years, the whole 9 yards.
Same.
So right before COVID, my husband was leaving to this like training where he was going to be gone, no contact, whatever. So we both kind of had made the decision that like, we don't want to possibly get pregnant before you leave. So let's go and see if you can even have babies, because I was told that we can't have babies. COVID happened. So the army was like, we're not seeing you because you're not dying. And I was like, great. So I like took those 3 months of just like prayer and like surrender. And like you said, like I'm trying to create like the healthiest home for my baby. And so my husband got home, and then we finally were able to get in contact with someone from our hospital. And I was like, I want to make sure that we're healthy. Like men are 50% of the infertility problem for a lot of families, and people don't know that. And so we got assigned to an infertility clinic, and I felt so uncomfortable because like to be classified as infertile, you technically have to be trying for a year. But I also wasn't going to have the conversation with my brand new doctor that like, I was like, we just got married and we were trying to save sex for marriage. So like, we technically haven't even been trying for, when we had friends that had literally recently just lost babies really far along, and they were actually walking through infertility. So I like felt like an imposter going into this appointment. It was the worst appointment I've ever been to. Yeah. Like we walked in, we sat down. He was like, this is how the baby, like how biology works. This is how everything will work. When's your next period? I was like, I think next week. And so he was like, great, we'll start you on this, and this medicine, come back in the next week and we'll do this, and this procedure. And then like we went back, and he was like, I'll just do an ultrasound real quick. He like, my husband was able to provide like a lot more grace here, because I was like mortified. But he like calls me down into the stirrups like a game show host, and is like, we'll slide on down.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know.
Awful. So cringy. My husband and I literally both left that appointment in full tears.
Oh, for sure.
We were like, I have no peace about this. I was like, I know that the Lord is sovereign of the womb. I know that ultimately, like, he's in control, but I want a baby, but I have no peace about literally going through this infertility clinic because the doctor was horrible. And this was a horrible experience. And so we went to go get smoothies. We're driving home to our apartment, and I get a call from the doctor's office, and she's like, hey, Miss Wilson, some of your blood work came back. You're already pregnant.
I just got chills.
My husband's driving, so I like play it cool. Okay. I'm like freaking out because the day before I had taken a pregnancy test and it was negative. So like we had taken that night and prayed and like grieved it and been like, the Lord said not right now. So I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And she was like, so I'll need to see you in like 2 more days to test your HCG levels. So you'll like have to come back in. I was like, okay. Hung up the phone. My husband's like, so like what happened? again, I'm trying to play it cool because I had spent those past couple months while he was gone looking through all the Pinterest announcements, all the cool ways to tell him. And so I was like, well, they just need me to come back for some blood work that they messed up. So we'll have to go back on Tuesday or Wednesday. So we get home, he goes to let the dog out. And I run upstairs and I take a pregnancy test and it's positive.
Oh my God.
So I like have my moment in the bathroom to myself and like full tears, like full surrender. I'm like, God, okay, like you knew. And then come downstairs and my husband, he was like, Raina, you wear your emotions on your sleeve. So I knew by the time I saw you on the stairs, something was up. Because I was like coming down the stairs trying to play it all cool. And he was like, I could read it on your face. And then I showed him the pregnancy test.
That is wild. What are the chances?
I know. So even in the midst, I think, of the anxiety and all of the stress that comes with pregnancy, like the way I always had to like keep going back to how we found out we were pregnant. And then like with the Army, we like have no say so in where we live. And so like we got sent to Texas in Fort Hood and our family is in Dallas. And so we didn't even put Fort Hood on our like top 10 list of like, hey, send us these amount of places. And then we found out we were pregnant and then we found out we were coming to Texas and we were like, oh, that's why, because our family is only 2 hours away. So it was just really cool to see like God's provision. And that's what I had to keep going back to, like you said, of like reminding myself of the truth of who God is, because if God is good and God is kind and he's not going to let me slip, then he ultimately has what's best for me and for my baby.
And it's so hard in the midst of all that. It's so hard to remember that. And just remind yourself, when you're going through all of that that's his plan. It can be so hard.
I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I would love to know, I'm a boy mom. We'll see what God does with our future babies. I have some friends that are awesome girl moms, but I think it's like super interesting to think about the climate of culture and beauty standards right now. So how are you preparing your own heart to mother your daughter, knowing just how dark of a place it can be on social media and her expectations for herself of what beauty actually means?
Yeah. So I think that starts at a really young age. I think that by just showing her how I take care of myself and how I speak about myself, and how I feel my body and how I move my body and how I take care of myself will be a huge role in, preventing her from, thinking negative things about herself.
Right.
Because, at the end of the day, I can tell her all of the things. I can tell her how she's beautiful every single day. I can make sure that she's nourishing her body, but in a balanced way and, not labeling foods good or bad or anything like that. And making sure she's still moving her body and doing fun, activities to get her moving. But at the end of the day, she's going to remember, I think, how I treated myself. And she's going to look up to me in that way. So if I'm not a good role model for her and she doesn't see that from a really young age, I think that she would definitely struggle with it. Because I feel like growing up, my mom and dad did a really good job of taking care of themselves. So I was around that and I was like, wow, like I remember in, first grade, I wrote a list of like, I wanted to do a workout and I like wrote down my workout and like what foods I wanted to eat because my dad had like bodybuilding, like magazines, like, and he would get protein powder and like they would go on runs and we had a Bowflex and like stuff like that. So you see your parents doing that and you're like, I want to be like them. So I think just having her around me and Zach when we're, working out and making her meals that, nourish her body and making sure that the talk about food isn't like good versus bad. I think that's all going to be really key in making sure that she has a healthy relationship with food and exercise. And then obviously just making sure she has good self-esteem and she knows how beautiful she is and never has to go a day where she doesn't, think she is. And I also don't want her to think ever that she has to be a certain size to be pretty. So making sure that she's not, I want to have like open conversations with her about, when she is older and she starts to, maybe pay more attention to how she looks and stuff. I just want to be able to have those open conversations and be like, I hope you never feel like you have to change for anyone, like you be you and everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. And that's so like key. I think you hit the nail on the head with, I think it would have been so helpful for me personally to know that like foods aren't good and bad. to like not view nutrition as like a dogmatic, it falls into one category or it doesn't. It's healthy or it isn't.
100%. Oh, and that's something I have to do with my family sometimes even too. Like, when my family wants like dieting advice or whatever, I'm just like, you have to make sure that you are eating a well-balanced diet and you're not like, okay, can't have McDonald's because it's bad and it's unhealthy. I'm like, no, you can, because sometimes that might be your only option. Like, and you have to just make a healthier choice. But it's also not the end of the world if you have to eat a cheeseburger and fries. Like, it's good. It's delicious. Like, some days I want that. Like, it's just all about balance, and you can't view foods as good or bad if you want to have a good relationship with food. And I think that's really important to instill in your children at a very young age, because if you're constantly like, oh, you can't have chocolate because it's bad, or we can't have McDonald's because it's bad, I think that makes them wonder, and they're like, okay, well, why is that bad? Like, and I don't ever want her to have that kind of relationship with food.
Definitely. And I think Jordan Syatt like says it best. He like always reminds people.
Oh, he's literally the best. I love him.
He's always like, you can't get fat in a day by eating one cheeseburger, just as you can't get healthy by eating one salad.
One salad. Exactly. 100%. 100%.
Bailey, this has been such a fun conversation. I would love to just share like where a community can connect with you. Like you said, your programs that you offer, plug all of your things.
Yeah, so my Instagram is bodyfitbalance. I have a website, bodyfitbalance.com, where you can buy our challenges, buy our programs. We have lots of programs. We have like fitness equipment, like accessories like glute bands, knee sleeves, belts, all that kind of jazz. And I also have a blog that's more like lifestyle based and just kind of a resource to share like motherhood and recipes and fun stuff like that. And that's BaileyMarieTurner.com. And then, we just do challenges like every couple months. They're really fun. We try to like incorporate gratitude and weekly challenges just to kind of like inspire people to be, again, the best version of themselves, not just in a fitness aspect. So like, for example, one of our challenges, that is happening right now, we have weekly challenges where like 1 week we'll ask them to donate to like their favorite organization or donate a few clothes to, a homeless shelter. And then the next week is like, they'll spend a day off social media. And then
that's awesome.
The next week is like, use up what you have in your fridge and freezer and don't spend money on groceries. So just like trying to just be, better in all areas of life, financially, emotionally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, like all of the aspects. Like, we are not just a fitness business. We are much more than that. And we just want everyone to be able to, live a healthy lifestyle, full of balance, full of happiness, and never ever feel restricted like I once did.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah,
that's such a good perspective to have, because I think people don't understand that health is more than what you eat and how you exercise.
100%. If you aren't taking care of your emotional, spiritual, mental health, like that's like 80% of the game.
Awesome. Well, I have one more closing question for you. It's how we close all of our episodes. And you've already shared a lot here, so I'm curious if your answer will be any different. But if you could provide any wisdom to your younger self or our community that is listening, what would you share?
Ooh, that is a good one. I think that it would be that God made you perfect the way you are, and you never have to change for anybody.
Oof. Yes. We just need that like plaster.
I know, right?
Everywhere.
I feel like we all need the reminder sometimes.
Oh, definitely. Well, thank you, Bailey, so much for sharing your time and wisdom with us. This was such a joy.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun.
Yeah. Well, I will link everything down below in our show notes, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
All right. See ya.
This episode of If Only I Were Wiser has ended, but be sure to subscribe for more episodes so you don't miss any encouragement. And don't forget to rate and review so we can continue to build our community and share more about topics that will be healing and helpful for you. See you in the next episode.